Feelings of anxiety, uncertainty, and powerlessness are widespread during a pandemic. They also happen to be the kinds of emotions that drive people into believing in conspiracy theories, according to our next guest. He is Joseph Uscinski, an associate professor of political science at the University of Miami and author of Conspiracy Theories, a Primer. And he joins us now from Miami in the Sunshine State. You have written that COVID-19 has created the kind of perfect storm for conspiracy theorists. How come?
So, if I wanted to do a laboratory experiment where I took people into a room and tried to do things to them to get them to believe in conspiracy theories, I couldn't do better than what nature is doing right now. So, everyone is focusing on the same thing at the same time, and they are facing economic uncertainty. They're afraid of a virus that could potentially kill them. And there are feelings of powerlessness and a lack of control that has taken over everyone, everywhere in the entire world right now. So psychologists who do experiments with these sorts of things could not do it better than what Mother Nature has done here.
Well, follow up on that. Psychologically, what do conspiracy theories offer people?
So what they offer is a way to understand things that we don't fully understand on our own. Now, it's sort of strange in the sense that we could reach for an explanation like, I don't fully understand COVID-19, and perhaps a conspiracy theory might help us understand it better, like it escaped from a Chinese laboratory, or maybe some nefarious group released it to kill us all. The problem is that it might give us some sense of certainty over an explanation. But most people aren't going to sleep better at night knowing that there's some powerful group out there that wants to kill them.
Well, the allegation that this virus was somehow developed in a lab in China is, there's no proof for that. There's no evidence of that. It is, quote unquote, out there. But that's not the wackiest conspiracy theory I've heard. I won't share mine, but you want to share one of yours?
So there are a lot of wacky ones out there. Perhaps the strangest I've heard is that the authorities knew about it for decades because Dean Koontz, the mystery novelist, wrote about it in a book that came out 40 years ago. And in that, there's a virus that gets released and starts killing people called the Wuhan 400. So people took this to mean that somehow the government, speaking through Dean Koontz, knew about this, and now it just finally escaped. But there's no evidence for that at all. And in fact, what Dean Koontz was writing about is very different than this particular coronavirus now.
True or false? Anthony Fauci essentially wants everybody to get this virus because he's got the patent on the vaccine coming down the way and stands to make $1 billion once we all have to get inoculated.
You know, what's interesting is that these conspiracies seem new and wacky and out there, but they're the same things that we've heard over and over again for my entire lifetime. So the only thing that really changes is the nouns and the names. So people thought that the bird flu was some sort of pharmaceutical company scam. They thought AIDS was a trick to kill off parts of the population that rich people didn't like. All of these things have been out there. And the idea that pharmaceutical companies or doctors want to get rich off of making us sick and then selling us fake cures has been around for time immemorial. So there's nothing new. It's just people are applying these old ideas to this new situation.
Well, the one I just mentioned came from I use this term advisedly, a documentary that is now making its ways on social media called Plandemic. And it's got a number of completely unverifiable claims that are made in Plandemic. But I want to know how belief in the Plandemic offers relief to the anxiety of those who tend to want to believe that stuff. How does that work?
Because they're latching onto something that tells them what they want to believe. They're latching onto something that matches their existing worldview. And it's important to these people to do that right now because of the anxiety and the uncertainty that they're facing around this. So it's serving as sort of a solve for the injuries that this pandemic is causing. And it doesn't necessarily occur to them because what these videos are saying matches some of the ideas they already have, it doesn't occur to them to think about, gee, are any of these ideas really rational? You could say, well, I know the inside dope. I know what's really going on, and everyone else is a sucker, or what they might call the sheeple. But they don't know what's really taking place, and I do, and that can make people feel good about themselves, adopting this, whether it's true or not.
Do those numbers worry you?
A little bit. I mean, I guess the good news is they could be higher, and in the United States, those numbers are very similar. So we get about 29% believing that the virus is being exaggerated to hurt President Trump, and 31% thinking that it was created and spread on purpose. What we find is that men and women are equal. Conspiracy theories are believed across different races and across political parties equally, too. And people are often surprised to hear that, but everyone can fall victim from time to time, and no matter what group they belong to.
I guess the one thing that's particularly troubling about it is that these groups of people tend to be absolutely impervious to empirically provable facts. But let's take a run at this anyway, Professor. Why don't you, let's assume somebody watching this right now believes one of the conspiracy theories that we've talked about already. What would you say to them to try to convince them of the error of their ways?
Well, there is no silver bullet to get someone to change their mind, especially if they have their feet dug in. So for those people, I, wish them a good day, and, send them along, because there isn't going to be much to discuss. Then maybe the first question I would ask is, what is your source for this? And that will do two things. It will, one, tell them that sources are important. It would make them think about where they're getting their information from, and it might cause them to have to say out loud and sort of take stock of where they got this information from. So if they have to say, well, I got this conspiracy theory from conservativeeaglenewspunch.com, it might ring to them in their mind that maybe that's not the best source of news, and perhaps they only bought into it because it made them feel good or it matched what they already believe, but it's not the best source of information.
Can I assume that saying to them, how can you be so stupid, is not a good approach to take?
No, because on the one hand, it might say more about you to them. So they'll be thinking, well, I know the inside dope, and it only shows how brainwashed this guy is.
Now, early in this pandemic, President Trump did refer to the virus as the Democrats' quote unquote new hoax. How does one combat conspiracy theories when the President of the United States, from time to time, seems to be lending so much credence to them?
Well, from time to time is oftentimes down here. This is a common rhetorical tool that the president uses. And it certainly did not help matters that he started off saying that this was the Democrats' new hoax. That certainly gave rise to a lot of Republicans, particularly people who really like Trump and pay attention to politics. It gave rise to them believing that. And it's those same people who now are taking part in protests, who aren't engaging in social distancing measures or washing their hands. So it's very dangerous rhetoric. And even though he's sort of changed his tune a little bit, he hasn't fully disavowed those ideas. It's difficult to refute things when the President of the United States says them. He's got the bully pulpit. So the interesting thing is that cable news is catering to, at least in my country, to partisanship. So they're going to give their audiences what they want to hear. So if you flip back and forth like I do from time to time, it's as if you're going from one dimension of being to a completely different dimension. You're in different universes, and that can give rise to people believing in conspiracy theories, because those cable channels, including Fox, are often teetering on the edge of just pushing those ideas blatantly. But I do want to bring a little bit of caution here. In the 1960s, when Kennedy was assassinated, it only took a few years for 80% of Americans to buy into a conspiracy theory surrounding the assassination. And there was no internet needed for that. There was no Facebook or Twitter needed for that. So people can do this on their own. So oftentimes when we're trying to blame conspiracy theories on the new thing, we're just trying to blame the new technology for what is really an old human problem.
Oh, that's a great point. Let's finish up on this, Professor. You've been researching conspiracy theories for many years now. Do you think we're entering a kind of a new phase of conspiracy theories?
It's hard to tell. If you read back on the newspapers over the last few decades, many journalists always think we're entering into the new age or the golden age, or this is the apex of conspiracy theorizing. Uh, I tend to think that there's more continuity than there is change. I mean, many of the theories that we're talking about now regarding COVID-19, you just change one or two words, and that conspiracy theory was popular last year or a few years ago with the last disease. Unfortunately, conspiracy theorists just aren't that creative, and there's really nothing new under the sun.
That is true. Ain't that the truth? Well, it's good of you to join us on TVO tonight. You were certainly new under our sun, and we're grateful that you could spare some time for us.
Well, thank you very much.